You think you can do anything, but you can't. You tell me about your love, it's a bad trend. You try to kiss me, I was against.
Gridfinder is the home of sim racing leagues. Our management tools allow you to recruit drivers and monitor their ratings and live splits. Find this and more at gridfinder.com. Sign up for free today.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series of 2024. We're back to, of course, continue our voyage around the UK. Round number 3, of course, sees us to our most peculiar circuit and, of course, the format of this evening. We head to Anglesey for 72 minutes of racing action, and also with that we take a trip through the entire 24-hour day-night cycle here on Anglesey Coastal. My name, of course, is Zach Sweeney. Jack Roll usually would be alongside me, unfortunately again experiencing a couple of technical difficulties, and we will get him in if/when we are able to, but a lot is on the horizon, a championship still at heart, and plenty more rounds to come after this as well. Of course, qualifying has already taken place. You can see there the grid. Bobby Simmons alongside Jamie Peters-Ennis on row 1. Greg Giles keeping up a very good run of form in qualifying there in 3rd. James Harvey completes row 2 ahead of Nathan Maximan, and championship leader Tom O'Farrell down in 6th. Ash Hill and Colin Dunn round off row number 4 ahead of Andy Hardy in P9. David Evans rounds off the top 10 ahead of Nick Creed and Gary Preble in 11th and 12th. Scott Thorne, Dan Abbott round off row number 7, completing the top 14. And of course, still plenty more drivers to come. A slightly shorter grid, but still an abundant one at that. Oscar Abruzese in 15th, Jake Wardle 16th ahead of William Hartley and Jack Mace on row 9. Glenn Copeland and Tom Bunton joining us, of course, for round 3 in P20. David Edwards ahead of Mark Hancock. Ben Abbott, who wasn't available during qualifying, start towards the back. Peter Brett and Harley Connolly as well, another driver that will be joining us for this evening, also rounding off the grid in P25. Still got a little bit of time before we head our way onto the grid before race starts, and well, this should be a very interesting day of racing. Let's take a look at the standings, of course. As I say, we've already had round 2. 2 weeks ago when we head to Donington, it was another victory for Tom O'Farrell that sees him take a maximum score of 100 points. Only 6, however, clear of reigning champion Bobby Simmons and Jamie Peters-Ennis. Of course, they're in 3rd, only a further 2 points behind. Nathan Maximan and Ben Abbott completing the top 5. Not much really separating this early on in the season. 24 points between 1st and 5th. And of course, still plenty of points still on offer. Plenty of chance for people to topple that man at the top, of course, of Tom O'Farrell. He has been on fire. when we went to Silverstone for the inaugural round, he competed at such a high level, just dominated, pretty much from the start till the finish of the race. Didn't really wait around too much to build a bit of a gap. 2 weeks ago when we headed to Donington, what a race that was. Honestly, one of the best that I've probably ever commentated on in terms of pure drama, pure action. And it was just non-stop really from start to finish. We barely got a moment to breathe, did myself and Jack. And of course, it was once again Tom O'Farrell, who not so comfortably last time out managed to take the victory, but still negotiated a safety car restart to perfection and just consistently drove his way through the carnage, the chaos, and everything else in between. So round number 3 should be very, very interesting indeed. There you can see the cars taking to their grid spots, and a not very long run before we get our way into turn number 1. Of course, we are here at the Anglesey Coastal circuit, not to the full Grand Prix, but the coastal one instead. So where they would usually continue left and go up that back straight towards the hairpin before coming back on themselves to complete the lap. They have a very awkward corkscrew chicane just to round off the lap. A right, then a left, very downhill as well. As you complete right at the crest of the hill, you run your way back down, and that corkscrew, you're taking a lot of speed going in these EnduroKAs, even for, only about 69 brake horsepower or so, still carrying a decent chunk of speed to get it stopped, to get it rotated, and of course not a huge margin on the exit to sort of, to sort of save you if you get it wrong. If you get it wrong, you will run a risk of getting it very, very wrong through that corkscrew section. So that is going to be a place of intrigue, especially with 25 cars going into that on lap number 1. Let's be very, very careful so that everyone can sort of get their way through nice and cleanly. Then they run their way through the final corner and then up towards turn number 1 again. Anglesey, of course, a very strong circuit. Turned in my first few laps a little bit earlier on, and I had a ton of fun. This EnduroKA is just a nice car to drive. Yeah, it's on the slightly slower side, not got a ton of power off the acceleration zones, but if you hook up a lap, it does feel really fun to drive. And of course, like we've seen, a very raceable car. The more important thing is the fact that it is very raceable. Should see a lot of action out there today. Some key overtaking spots going into that very heavy braking zone just after turn 2. You go through that slightly sort of straight-ish section, certainly flat out all the way up to Rocket. Slam on the brakes before you then head yourself back downhill before going back uphill. Come back on yourself, and you can absolutely launch some moves on the brakes. Will be interesting as well to see the sort of how these people contend with the day-night cycle as well. Not a lot of track lighting around Anglesey, so they are purely relying on their own headlights and the headlights of others around them. So, yeah, when it gets dark, who are going to be the ones to obviously maximise the opportunities that come with that? Who are going to be the ones to sort of keep themselves out of trouble as such and not park it into the barrier or into the back of someone else because they can't see? A big fear of some. Got note that a couple of people out there haven't ever driven in sort of the nighttime on this sim ever before, and it is a big adjustment to make. Of course, those that are more familiar with endurance racing and things like that, of course, will become accustomed to driving on instinct and not having as much visibility. But for others, it could be a completely new learning curve, which always opens the door for interesting avenues to come into play. Got about a couple of minutes before we head ourselves onto the grid for the race start, and what a good race that we've got in terms of potential on the horizon. Just been sort of informed that a very good point has been made by Toby Owen in the sense that when it's dark, obviously you can't see, right? That goes without saying. But a lot of those references that you build yourself, there aren't a lot of braking boards out there on circuit here at Anglesey. There's no sort of 200, 150, 150 marker boards. You build your own references, like lines on the track, brakes in the grass, tire barriers, things like that. And when the visibility gets low, it becomes harder and harder to see those references, and you just have to eyeball it going into every corner, and that's a skill in of itself. That muscle memory through each circuit, each corner of the circuit, and that's something that you really gain through experience. So those more experienced drivers with endurance racing, with driving at night time, that adjustment, that will really help them obviously come to the forefront throughout the race. Strategy, another thing that will be a big talking point throughout the race. 72 minutes compared to the normal 60, so an extra 12 minutes of racing added on, and yet still the same mandatory pit stop requirements. They do have to come in at some point over the course of this race. Same tyre wear, same fuel wear, also in effect. So basically, you're going to have to be on the tyres that are going to wear at the same rate throughout the, for the duration of the race. So tyre wear, tyre conservation, fuel conservation, all going to be really big things over the course of the race. Very easy to scrub the car as well around Anglesey. A lot of high-speed corners and heavy braking zones, a lot of undulation where you are going to be wearing your tyres. So strategy, something to keep an eye out for as well. So should be a lot of fun. The racing in of itself should be fun enough, but everything else that surrounds it also could be equally as good. Getting told that, of course, we're going to go to the grid start now. As you can see, the cars lined up, raring to go, waiting, of course, for that opportunity to send themselves underway for 72 minutes of racing action. There are the lights. Going to be joined by Chris Buxton, by the way, in the booth. We'll get to him in just a second. The 6 red lights at the top of your screen. We've got Bobby Simmons and Jamie Peters-Ennis, the front row. Round number 3 of the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series here at Anglesey. 72 minutes of racing action is underway. A very short run towards turn 1 and a lot of wheel spin being kicked up. There's championship leader Tom O'Farrell trying to get himself off to a good a start as possible as he sends his way around the outside, side by side, just in the background as well. But so far, so good in terms of a clean start, side by side for the lead as well. You can see Peters-Ennis immediately challenging Bobby Simmons as they run their way in towards the first braking zone of turn number 2, and huge carnage already. Big pile up running their way into the first braking zone. So far, so good though. Chris, of course, welcome in to the commentary booth. We've dropped you right into the action, right into the deep end. But so far, fairly clean start here in Anglesey.
Yeah, absolutely, literally so. Into the action, as hot as ever. These incredible Ford KAs, very light on power, huge emphasis on momentum racing. If you've ever been to Anglesey, it looks as glorious as we see. But we've had a pretty good start. Ben Simmons up top, Jamie Peters-Ennis hot in pursuit side by side as they come up towards Rocket In. Lots of side by sides. The 31 car, big dive there on Tom O'Farrell. That's not gone quite as according to plan. That could go horribly wrong. Well navigated by our drivers as they come up towards turns 8 and 9. As they now start to descend through the turns. My goodness me, these cars may be light on power, they are hot on action.
Yeah, they are indeed, of course. Welcome in, as I've said already. Some carnage though. Colin Dunn unfortunately stranded in the middle of the circuit as they rise up over the crest. Bit of contact, I think. That might have been Abrit Zazi making a slight bit of contact. And now we run away into the most technical part of the circuit. This downhill run through the corkscrew. William Hartley trying to make the most of the run before a quick flick to the left to round off the lap. I have to say, I'm quite impressed as to how well they've negotiated that. I thought there was going to be a lot more in terms of a pile-up.
They did very well, didn't they? Considering you had someone, several cars indeed, stranded sideways, blocking the way. But yes, that is indeed very, very well navigated by the drivers. But another thing I've loved all series long in the EnduroKA, the liveries look absolutely amazing, especially in the virtual sunshine that we are now enjoying here in Anglesey. A beautiful, beautiful Welsh circuit. It may take a while to get to for most people, but it is such a great place. And these Ford KAs very, very well suited to the terrain.
Yeah, talking to, of course, Mike Yao before the broadcast, and yeah, it is in the middle of nowhere. James Harvey fighting away with championship leader Tom O'Farrell into the braking zone, and O'Farrell tries to go the long way around, bit of contact on the exit as Harvey sends sideways, joins the road, and there's contact, and championship leader O'Farrell is round, facing the wrong way. Absolute carnage in towards the next right. Of course, Nathan Maximan rejoins the circuit, but down in P12. That's going to be a tough one to claw back.
Yeah, had to say it, Zach, didn't you? You had to say it. Commentator Kurz, that's one to you. But yeah, that is the problem with this particular circuit, is that if you do get it all wrong up there at Rocket In, you've got nowhere to go other than into someone's pathway. As Greg Giles here just losing out to Jamie Peters-Ennis, who they've been locked in that battle for second for a good couple of laps now. And then you've got the Abbott brothers right behind, Dan and Barry, that are in hot pursuit. Again, the pace may look pedestrian, but the racing action still very, very hot. There's these two coming up towards turn 2. May not need too much braking, but momentum always very key in these cars. Safety car is out following the incidents that we've had.
Yeah, so similar to the race start 2 weeks ago at Donington. They'll be neutralised, of course. Mark Raddenbury at the wheel of that safety car. It is a good thing. He ended up doing some practice laps because he wasn't too sure whether or not he'd be needed, but good thing that he did get some practice laps in and he's able to lead the pack to neutralise the race. That's unfortunate, though, for reigning champion Bobby Simmons, because obviously getting that pole position, trying to get a good start, and in the opening moments was really able to capitalize off the carnage quite nicely. And now all that hard work means nothing. You know, Greg Giles, Jamie Peters-Ennis, they're able to reclose what was previously sort of an 8/10, just over a second gap, I think, at its peak. He's got to do all that over again if he wants to maintain control of this race.
That's the nature of the beast, isn't it? Is that, yeah, safety car giveth and safety car taketh away. But that being said, once a gap has been built, it can always be rebuilt. But this is a moment that, yeah, these drivers, they don't often practice for. It's one of these moments you practice racing at pace. You don't practice being behind the safety car. So it's amazing actually how many mistakes can take place whilst you are trying to behave yourself. We've all seen it where, yeah, even in these light powered cars, one little mistake can actually send you, or even worse, somebody else, careening off the road. It's slightly embarrassing as well, because you're supposed to be down to pit lane speed, but it's surprisingly easy to do. But yeah, Bobby Simmons, beg your pardon, doing exactly what he needed to do first time round. He'll be chomping at the bit, ready to get going once more.
Yeah, of course, with like we saw a couple of weeks ago at Donington, actually, the biggest problem is miscommunication more than anything. Obviously, with when the safety car is deployed, and then slowing down to sort of match that safety car speed as such. I can't remember who it was, but going through the Craner curve, someone just completely forgot what was, you know, the safety car had been called, and then obviously, unfortunately, had to very suddenly slam onto their brakes to get the car stopped and slowed down, and I think in the end did tap the rear end. Easily done. We've all done it, admittedly, but we all have that, you know, we head in our laps in terms of shame after we've done it, especially if it gets caught on the broadcast. But, you know, as I said, it happens to everyone at least once, and safety cars are always a peculiar sort of spanner into the works. What it has done, though, is, of course, as we touched on, taketh from Bobby Simmons in terms of that gap he built early on. However, it's sort of given that lifeline to the likes of O'Farrell and Maximan involved in that carnage that caused the safety car to have everyone nicely bunched up, ready for the taking once again.
Well, yeah, we're talking about embarrassing mistakes behind the safety car. On a couple of occasions where I have been the safety car, in virtual terms, of course, I've actually spun. So, yeah, the safety car causing issues is a very rare one. But sadly, I have managed to do that in my sim racing lifetime, which does span quite a few years now, more than I care to admit at this point. But as we can now see, Bobby Simmons backing up the pack as the safety car is due to retire back into the pits. And we will be running into the dark hours, so the headlights being on is not just for show. Now, Bobby Simmons getting back underway. Some of the tyre temperature would have been lost from these cars. They don't necessarily rely too much on very, very hot, sticky tyres due to them being light-powered. That being said, you still will gain a traction advantage. Simmons, from Giles, from Peters-Ennis, then the pair of Abbotts, your top five.
Yeah, good clean restart for Bobby Simmons, controlled the pack quite nicely, was able to maintain control at the top. The two Abbotts running side by side, Ben of course versus his brother Dan, there battling over fourth still. Connell and Preble as well in that fight for seventh. Gary unfortunately dropping down to the back end of the top 10, even more so than that, maybe had an issue or two in the early stages of this restart. The clock, of course, still ticking down, an hour and 4 still left to go. We're through the early part of the race. Everyone should be nicely bedded in, but of course with that restart disrupting the flow ever so slightly. Bobby Simmons, though, not waiting around for anybody to regain that gap.
He's got the command of Anglesey very much under his right foot, and again with his main championship rival Tom O'Farrell some way down the field. Yeah, this is a perfect time for him to capitalize on those early issues and then really make good his championship challenge. 2 rounds down with quite a few still to go, admittedly, but you take any advantage where you can, in particularly in these kind of races. Look at the way that he slides the car beautifully down through the chicane. Absolutely wonderful car control. As we now look a little bit further back, Harley Connolly in that lovely. All the liveries look absolutely resplendent and amazing in the virtual sunshine. But so many battles. Yes, the safety car has only just peeled in, but you are starting to see gaps forming in the field. Not so much for Oscar Abruzzi as he's having a look on the outside line of Hartley, coming down into turn 2. Can't quite get it done. Tries to cut back underneath the car 17. He's now going to be forced to the outside line. That isn't going to win out for him this time. But the JW Racing sponsored livery is really pressing on now. Outside line once again. Can't get it done. The brilliant defensive driving from Hartley holding on to that top 10 spot.
Yeah, doing a brilliant job. Abruzzi, of course, didn't get off to the best of starts, but looking to fight back up as we climb up the hill towards probably the heaviest braking zone on the circuit. Really a great opportunity to send a move to the inside if you fancy it. Abruzzi, though, opts not to go for that particular move, but you can set yourself up for that run once again as you reclimb your way towards the peak of the hill. If you're able to get the power down, you touched on momentum a little bit earlier on, only about 69 brake horsepower and only sort of 110 newton meters of torque in these EnduroKA machines, so you don't have a lot underneath your right foot, and you've got to maximize every single bit that you can if you want to get moves done.
Absolutely so, and Bobby Simmons being the man that is doing the job very, very well at the moment. Speaking of, he is on the hunt for Ben Simmons. He wants that lead. He's not waiting for the timer to tick down. He's not waiting for pit stops to play their part, which will happen 15 minutes into the race, and the pit stop window will close at the 1 hour mark. Look how defensive Simmons was coming up into turn 2. That was really, really heavy defensive driving there. That's going to cost them a lot of momentum. Now Giles goes for that inside line move. Can he get it done coming down to the church? No, not quite. That's given Peter Ennis a big old incentive. He's gained 3/10 already on the top 2. The duo at the top will be a trio, and Ben Abbott is being dragged along for the party as well.
He is. Look at that door-to-door rubbing here. Greg Giles trying to, of course, spark the move for the lead, but a contact between the pair of them. It is going to be the reigning champion that has the inside line for the braking zone. Sent it in a bit too deep, though. Giles trying to get the up and under. He does a good job of that, but meets the rear end of Simmons' car. A bit more contact as Peter Ennis, and now, of course, Ben Abbott joins the fight. I have to remind you that that man started towards the back of the field and is already up into 4th in 12 minutes of racing, of course with the safety car as well. He has done a sensational job and has eyes for the lead. So too does Greg Giles as they run their way downhill.
And again, having a look at the inside line coming down towards the chicane. Can he get it done? No, not quite. Ben Simmons, again, that wonderful sliding motion that Ben is utilizing is keeping Greg Giles at bay, but it's costing Ben Simmons that all-crucial momentum. That's keeping Greg Giles in the hunt. Then Peter Ennis is only a few tenths back. So look at the lap times last time around. The top 2, well over a second slower than Peter Ennis. So that is what we are talking about by momentum. Oh, Greg Giles going for that open door. The inside line coming up towards the banking, and very much has the door unceremoniously slammed in his face. What can Peter Ennis do? Now, you can always kind of predict to a point a 2-car battle. Yeah, you know where the punch and counter-punch momentum is going to come from. But when you add a 3rd, and we are potentially looking to add a 4th with Ben Abbott there as well, the whole dynamic of the battle completely changes. This is going to be fascinating.
It really is, and of course with it very quickly becoming dark, you can see the sun setting in a very quick time as Bobby Simmons well held, my good sir. He has only lost 1 place because of that slight tap to the rear end from Greg Giles, but when you're running that fast, it's so easy for a lot of things to go wrong all at once. Giles takes the lead. Of course, Bobby Simmons not going to be very happy about that one bit, but you have to say that was very strong car control to keep that car pointing the right way.
Scrabble drivers, I've heard front-wheel drive cars referred to, point the nose and floor it. And that's exactly what Ben Simmons had to do, even though he was actually in a braking zone coming up towards Rocket in. And again, you see the sliding motion, but that's not gone well for Bobby Simmons. Couldn't quite keep it under control. Peter Ennis has gone through. Ben Abbott has gone through. Now, we couldn't tell quite from that camera angle whether there was impact again on Bobby Simmons, but he will not be happy. It was a bit bullish, really, from Greg Giles, in my opinion. The kind of bump and run momentum. Yes, these are tin top cars. Yes, they don't have a lot of speed, so they can take these impacts, but yeah, in a braking zone that can really cause trouble. Ben Abbott's gone a bit deep into the banking. Turn 2 gets it back under control though. Peter Ennis in that somewhat bright coloured car, we'll say, is now on the hunt for the top spot. Greg Giles, now without challenge, has built that lead up to a 2nd, but Peter Ennis is now the lead of a trio, forming behind. Not too far back is Hill, actually, in that kind of lemon and lime flavoured car. Ash Hill, 7th in the championship, could well eye up a very strong top 5 slot here. If well, we still have just under an hour's racing left, granted, but he's in a really good spot here to get some really good points on the board.
He is, and Ash Hill, of course, very much used to defending last time out at Donington, but was no stranger to some fantastic moves in order to defend. This time, though, his roles reversed. He's trying to close in to, of course, attack this top 4 battle for the lead. Greg Giles, of course, a very strong qualifier, looking for that break in terms of the race, the consistent run all the way through, and if there's any time to prove it, it's today. Bobby Simmons immediately looking to go to the inside of the corkscrew, saw the gap and sent the move on the brakes on Ben Abbott. Now as they run their way through the final corner, Simmons trying to eye up that space on the inside as they run their way towards turn number 1, not waiting around at all for an invitation to claw his way back onto the podium side by side as they run their way through the very fast sweeping nature of turn number 1, completely flat out if you're on the ideal racing line. Bobby Simmons back into 3rd as the sun continues to set here in Anglesey.
Yes, very much. The dark hours very much change the look and feel of a track far more than you realise until you actually race in the dark. All your visual references completely change. You're more relying on instinct and muscle memory when the darkness falls. But Bobby Simmons, you don't often see a move up at corkscrew. The undulation change is very, very dramatic in that section, as it's a very steep drop. I mean, you can see from this camera angle that the level of altitude change you go through from the bottom to the top, as that's a bit deep from Ben Abbott. Slightly different line. Oh, the race leader spun. Craig Giles has had a big spin there, whether that was impact induced or whether that was off his own right foot. It looked like it was a kind of contact induced, as it was the tail that let go, which is quite round on front wheel drive cars. There, a couple of cars back, I think it was Maximin, that was also having a bit of a moment, slightly too deep coming through Rocket.
Yeah, a couple of issues, and you can see just how quickly it is getting dark. We can barely see them now as another driver around. Was that Simmons? It was. Indeed, it was the reigning champion and a driver that could take a huge chunk of points out of the championship lead of Tom O'Farrell, who was not having the best of days in the office down there in 10th, has had yet another issue. As you can see, the lights firmly on, the sun really beginning to set here. Bobby Simmons down to 7th, still ahead of O'Farrell, mind you, but a lot of work to do, and very clearly quite a frustrated driver. He wants more out of this race, and at the moment he's not getting it.
Yeah, he's that's kind of frustration taking over, overdriving the car, despite the fact, like we said, they're light powered cars. You overdrive them, the tail can still let go, especially there at the corkscrew. Like I said, because the undulation change is very, very severe, the cars are so unsettled. Even these little cars will spin if you push them a little bit too hard. Now, what can Ben Simmons do? He certainly can make that gap back again. We still have plenty of time until the pit stops happen and the checker flag falls in 55 odd minutes. And you don't become champion in a series like this without having the scale. A bit of a door bang there on Dan Abbott, but does manage to barge his way through. Kind of on that instance, that was a bit firm fair as racing there, because it was a kind of door-to-door impact mid-corner as opposed to an impact in a braking zone, which is what Ben Simmons had previously. I mean, you kind of expect that. But someone who is making hay with the sun shines, looking at the gaps, is Peter Ennis. He has broken away from Dan Abbott. Whoa, big slide there. Who was that was going for a moment?
Maximin.
It was indeed Maximin, as Dan Abbott has now claimed that 6th position again through the corkscrew. The cars are very unsettled. It's really easy to drop them, and darkness most certainly has taken hold now.
It is, of course. We do the entire 24-hour day-night cycle, reminiscent of the 24-hour races that took place for the EnduroKA series in 22, and once again we'll be returning, to the best of my knowledge, for 2024 as well. 72 minutes, that equates to an hour in-game time every 3 minutes in real life time, which means that it's going to get dark very quickly, but hopefully, on the flip side of that, it's going to become light also equally as quickly. Fingers crossed they're not going to have to bear with it for too much longer. Pit window, of course, also open, so maybe some people you can't blame him for wanting some maybe some clear air during this midnight period where everyone is going to be under pressure. You really can't. It's just specks of headlights really out there side by side. I think Creed versus Maximan, that's the fight for 8th. Here's Harley Connolly as well on the back of Dan Abbott, going through the left, then into the sweeping nature of the right, really trying to maximize that undulation, that camber to rotate the car. Not really enough, and very easy to understeer on the exit as well. But you have to say, it must be so difficult to be out there right now. I couldn't possibly be able to cope with how dark it is right now.
I can actually comment. I have commentated Anglesey in the dark. And yep, you're absolutely right. It is as hard as you think it is. We at least in sim racing have the advantage of knowing who on earth we are either riding on board with, or who the camera is pointing at by the fact that the name is in the bottom right hand corner. But insofar as trying to identify anyone else, all you have is headlights. Headlights and a vague knowing on positioning, as we've got a great three-way battle going on right ahead of us, three wide nearly. Oh, there was impact coming into the banking. Oh, goodness me, they all managed to hold their station quite well. The 119, that's Connell, has he's gained a couple, he's lost a couple. This battle's still not concluded, still side by side now, coming down into Church. That is between Creed and is that Creed and Connell, or Creed and Abbott? No, beg your pardon, it's Maximin and Abbott that's involved in that. There's overtakes going on all over the place. This absolutely superb stuff. Nick Creed ready to get involved should something happen to these three. Oh, they're going to go three wide coming up into Rocket. Well, it's going to be brave if they do. I know they're small, but it's still a very tight part of the circuit on the outside line.
Oh no,
and that's exactly why you don't want to go three wide. If someone makes a mistake, it wipes all three of you out. But in fairness, Harvey Connell managed to keep the car pointing in the right direction, losing only out to Nick Creed. That was very well handled.
Yeah, it was. More contact. Harley Connolly into the back of Nick Creed momentarily as they rise up over the crest of the hill, back down towards the corkscrew section. Tom O'Farrell making some moves as well. The championship leader so far has won both races in the season and, well, was looking positive maybe for going for 3. But unfortunately not the best of starts, not the best of qualifyings, and is now on a fight back towards the front. But the good thing is that, well, at least everyone's nicely lined up for him. All he's got to do is get after them and get some overtakes done, which, to be fair for Tom O'Farrell, he's not overly used to so far this season.
No, well, again, with the very different conditions we are facing here in Anglesey, which, again, is a very different type of circuit that we've had so far with Silverstone National and Donington Park. Donington being one of my favourite circuits in the entire country. I make no apologies for saying so. But Anglesey's very, very different. It's the undulation changing, and it, of course, being racing in the dark, it requires a very different kind of discipline. They know the cars, they know what they're capable of, as we're seeing Tom O'Farrell line up Nick Creed coming through Church and on the way up towards Rocket once again. He's got the move done. I think Nick Creed's kind of just holding the inside line. I think realistically he may know that fight isn't entirely his. That being said, he's had a good exit from Rocket in. Oh, and a punch in the face to Nick Creed from Tom O'Farrell. Both cars holding onto their line. Is our current camera car Harley Connell ready to do battle again? Well, he's certainly ready to pick up the pieces if it all goes wrong. But Tom O'Farrell pushing hard to close in on Ben Simmons as Harley Connell has gone too deep. Very, very lightning power there may be, it's still very easy to make a mistake, especially now in the darkness. The tyres aren't quite biting as much as they had before. We'll see more slidey-ways action, the likes of which Ben Simmons was displaying for us earlier.
Yeah, very much so. You can see here, back towards the tail end of the field, David Evans trying to maximise the fight between Wardle and Harvey. He pulls to the left, and this is always going to be treacherous, where you can't really see where the track starts or ends, and that is exactly how it can happen in disaster. David Evans facing the wrong way, having to wait an eternity to rejoin the circuit, and even more scary when you can't see what's coming until sort of the last minute when the headlights emerge over the crest, and then you know where people are. Dan Abbott versus Tom O'Farrell just ahead of Nick Creed as well. This is a very difficult time of the race, but as soon as they tick past midnight, of course, it will only begin to get better from there. Dipping a wheel into the gravel, you can see the championship leader eyeing up that move on Abbott, who himself has made some good moves, similar to his brother, of course, of Ben, who's up there in second from the back of the grid. Abbott making some gains too, but O'Farrell wants to continue his charge towards the front, side by side in towards Rocket, and O'Farrell tries to go the long way around but can't quite rotate the car enough in order to see himself the long way through.
Great on the roof camera here from Tom O'Farrell's car as he continues his chase on Dan Abbott. But if Tom, I say if, slightly disingenuous on Tom, our championship leader, but Dan defending exactly as he needs to do. Tom lining up the move on the outside line coming down towards the corkscrew. Can he get it done before he gets it? Ben Simmons now back up into a podium spot as he's gotten ahead of former race leader Giles. Oh no, that's why, because Greg Giles has gone off the road. Big cloud of dust you see on the inside line somewhat. Well, that'll be where the incident happened. Giles now, he's gone into the pit lane. That's where the pit lane entrance is. I actually saw someone do that in real life. They kind of had an incident, ended up on track, and then darted across the grass to get back into the pit lane again. Tom O'Farrell, is he going to get the move coming into the banking this time? He's got the momentum, he's got the inside line, and this time he has got the position. Can Dan Abbott get the momentum back to counter-attack? We will have to see, but for the moment, that's Tom O'Farrell up into 6th.
Yeah, really starting to make some gains, and to be fair, I predicted so. What didn't qualify too well, but his experience and his knowledge in maybe treacherous conditions like this. Dan Abbott trying to eye up the move on Nick Creed. This is the fight once again for 7th as they rise up their way towards the top of the hill into the braking zone. Just trying to spot your braking point wherever you can, really. It is a guessing game in such dark conditions. Onto the brakes though, and it is Creed that is later on compared to the of course Dan Abbott, who concedes the position 4 now. They've also got Connolly and well, not really Preble, who's about a couple of seconds behind, but still Dan Abbott definitely under pressure, and this is the separator between the good and the great in the race.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can see on the overlay at the top how much longer the pit lane is open for. That's Bobby Simmons banzaiing the inside of the corkscrew. We've seen him do it once already. He's done it again on Ben Abbott this time, back up into 2nd. But look at Jamie Peters-Ennis. Well, we can't look at him because 1 is dark, and 2, he's quite some distance in the lead at the moment. He's built up a 6-second lead over the chasing pack, so he's really made hay while the sun shines without pressure directly behind. Whoa, as Ben Abbott nearly ends up in the boot of Ben Simmons there as they come up into the backing once again. Now, Simmons has been on somewhat of a recovery mission. I think it's fair to say that the red mist has very much descended on our championship leader, our championship protagonist, our champion from last season. So can he continue that? It's all well and good having the determination to chase towards the top spot. You've got to keep it in check. We've seen Ben Simmons already overdrive the car a couple of times. He has still got time to close in that gap to Peters-Ennis. And I think by the time Ben Simmons catches up to our current race leader, Jamie Peters-Ennis is going to have a hell of a task. It's keeping one somewhat gruntled Ben Simmons under wraps, I would think.
Absolutely, side by side, a bit further back. The battle for 8th continues. Abbott staying in front of Connolly, who gets a nice little cut back through Rocket, but tries to set it up once again through the next right. Doesn't quite happen. Parked pretty nicely for Dan Abbott as they're locked in a bit of a fight here. Spanning, you know, a couple of places. However, way too late on the brakes. Harley Connolly straight into the back of Abbott, who points the wrong way, spins round, and I think might well be able to rejoin just about in 10th place. There is his brother Ben Abbott, of course, running really nicely in 3rd place, making so many positions up so early on in this race, and still eyes on for 2nd place. Ash Hill versus Nathan Maximan, who exceeds the track limits momentarily, brings it back on just ahead. Ash Hill running a really nice race up there inside the top 5 as well. A lot of people though locked in some fairly chaotic battles. Be interesting to see when the main protagonists make their way into the pit lane.
Yes, indeed. The pit lane open for another, or just under 33 minutes. It's the final 15 or final 12 or so that the pit lane will be closed by. So if you haven't served your pit stop by then, a penalty will ensue. But look at Greg Giles. Very much in a menacing position, very much in the rear mirror. Ash Hill on the back of Nathan Maximan, beg your pardon. Very much occupying the rear mirrors and, of course, flooding them with light on the leading of this great number 31 car. Or did Maximan go a bit deep? No, I think Ash Hill was actually a little bit cautious coming into that. That has lost him a couple of car lengths on his prey. Nathan Maximan doing a great job. Slightly further back, Scott Thorne on the somewhat very brightly coloured Colin Dunn. Whoa, Scott Thorne nearly into the back of Colin Dunn's car. They're coming up into Rocket. But what can Scott Thorne do? Colin, a very seasoned racer, both virtually and in the real world. That's not an easy car to pass by any stretch.
It is not, but of course, with it being so brightly coloured, probably not a bad thing at this portion in the race. Did say to Mark Raddenbury, of course, of Positive Perceptions, who have done the vast majority of the liveries out there on circuit today, could he shoot us some high-vis ones, just so that we can actually see what's going on? Of course, the likes of Peter Zennis out in front with his very colourful blue and pink machine as well. At least then you can somewhat see the colours reflecting off of them, but, you know, in contrast to the very dark coloured other ones that we've got out there as well. But I think everyone's coping fairly well. As far as pitch black goes, around a circuit that's got absolutely no circuit lighting, they're not doing too bad, Chris.
Yeah, very much so. As Oscar Abruzzi looks for an inside outside. Try that entire sentence again. Inside a manoeuvre on Evans coming through the corkscrew. Like I said before, it's a really tricky place to try and move. The undulation change and the tight corners are very difficult to get any traction. But you know, Ben Simmons, no one's told him that, as he's made that move stick several times. That lead coming down now, 4.3 seconds between Peter Zennis and Simmons. We are going to have a lead battle in the next few laps, although it does depend when our front runners do pit. That may well be decided at that point. Back with Dunn and Thorne as they are coming down through the corkscrew themselves. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There's not a lot of like, I think there is a little bit more than the simulator is actually giving us at the moment. I beg your pardon, they're not at the corkscrew, they're actually coming through church. See, it's really hard to tell where they are from the onboard shot. The headlights do tend to illuminate a bit more than this, but it is still very, very difficult to identify your visual markers. That isn't exaggerated in the real world. So now we are just coming down through the left-hand side. Okay, now we have just done the corkscrew over the line once more. So, approaching halfway-ish in the race, it is Peter Zennis from Simmons from Abbott. Your top three, they are somewhat spaced out at the moment, but a great battle for seventh still, for eighth, between Connell and Preble is still very much intact, as well as this battle for 11th between Colin Dunn and Scott Thorne.
Very much so. Dunn keeping Thorne at bay quite nicely, just doing everything that he needs to do at this stage in the race, and I think both of them are under the consensus that maybe let's not fight too hard. Of course, maybe not worth it in the grand scheme of things. As far as the season goes, this definitely is the endurance round as such, only 12 minutes longer than usual, but with tyre wear and fuel wear and just attritions rates, then it can really take a toll, similar to the toll taken, I believe. It might be a little bit of lap traffic to contend with. Gary Preble on the back of Harley Connolly as well. This is the fight for 8th, so of course got a little bit of dust to run with as they run up towards the crest of the hill, and then they run their way back down towards the corkscrew. You can see Preble getting a much better, tighter run on the exit to maybe have a look to go to the outside through the sweeping left. Not enough to convincingly be alongside by the time they slam onto the brakes for the corkscrew. Tricky enough in the day, let alone in the night.
Absolutely. So there is the pit lane entry to the left-hand side that we've just gone past. Gary Preble, hey, he had quite a good amount of momentum coming out of the final turn. Can he make use of it? And again, no, not quite before they get down towards turn 1. That's quite wide for Connell, but he manages to keep it in check, and they are closing in. Is that Nick Creed? The only way I'm thinking that is by the timing tower. Yes, that is about 2 seconds. That's what 2 seconds looks like in these cars between Connell and Creed. So Creed has lost his playmate somewhat. That's probably down to pit stops more than anything else. We saw Nick Creed in a great battle earlier on, but now finds over a little bit on his own again. That's Connell flirting with the grass on the outside line of Church. Does manage to keep the car in check. Front-wheel drives don't tend to have that very sudden snap habit as much as rear-wheel cars do. That being said, we see quite a few having a go at the tail end, overtaking the front. Up into Rocket once again. These two that we are watching, which is Connell and Preble, closing in as best they can on Nick Creed. Nick Creed, without immediate challenge, doesn't have to defend from anybody. Of course, he is able to just keep his momentum, and at the moment he's keeping that gap at around 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, maintaining it more than anything, which, you know, isn't the worst thing to be doing. Probably, you know, if you're not going to gain, at least keep it the same relative to those behind you. You can see actually there the check-in for the fight for the lead. Well, not a fight now, but could well be in a few laps' time. Last lap set was a 29.3 for Peter Zennis, and I think a 28.9 for Bobby Simmons. So a good 4 tenths quicker there for Simmons, and you can see that gap now sub 3 for the lead. Bobby Simmons, of course, has been on a fight back pretty much this entire race. After the first bit of incidents that occurred, he's just taken one step forward, two steps back, and now is taking some big leaps in order to get back into contention for the race lead and re-spark that contention for the championship. Been speaking to both Simmons and O'Farrell over the course of the season in the interview room, and both of them are fired up. Both of them are ready for that championship battle, and only 6 points separates them. For Bobby Simmons, with O'Farrell not having the strongest of races, they're in 6th. Bobby Simmons has a huge chance to capitalise here.
Very true, but as Bobby Simmons has already proven, he is not immune to a mistake. I think he's now settled back into his rhythm. He's probably settled himself down as far as the red mist is concerned, as we now cut back to Connell and Preble. Battle for 8th position, 2 seconds behind Creed. So they have cut that down, but in the braking zone, the accordion effect still kicks in, so that gap will ebb and flow. It will increase, it will decrease, etc., etc. Tom O'Farrell is catching the back of Ash Hill, so the current championship leader looking to gain 5th place, potentially before the pit stops. They still have another just shy of 26 minutes before the pit stop, before the pit window has closed. Now riding on board with Tom O'Farrell as he is chasing off after the what I call the lemon and lime flavoured car of Ash Hill. That has a superb livery. I do quite like that, if I'm honest. Not that we get to enjoy it, of course, in its full resplendor in the dark hours. Oh, again, Tom Farrell looking the inside line. Gary Preble now looks the inside line as they are coming up towards the next right-hander. What he's trying to do is throw Harley Connell in out of step. But every single time Gary Preble is trying to move, Connell has had an answer to it. Superb driving from both drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys on the top of their game, and they have to be keeping the focus high on Connolly. A small mistake is taken off the road. Rejoins, however, didn't lose too much time, but definitely a little bit of speed scrubbed off. Maybe some dirt on the tyres as they approach the braking zone. Gary Preble potentially seeing this as a golden opportunity to look to the left-hand side. Is he going to be braver on the brakes? Yes, he is, to take that 8th place away from Connolly, who said, he had a bulletproof defence. He's still trying to continue that theme. Chucks the move back to the inside. Here comes the up and under once again from Preble as Connolly pushes the limits of the track, and well, we said his bulletproof defence might well have come to an end, or at least it looked it for a second. Gary Preble sends the move back to the right hand side. Connolly has fought valiantly and continued to do so as they approach the corkscrew.
I think that's 1-1 on commentator Kerr's count now, Mr. Sweeney, but fair play to Harley Connolly. I thought that move was done. I think Gary Preble thought that was his opportunity, which he then seized. But the very, very experienced driving hand there of Connolly knew exactly what to do. He kept his head at the right time, didn't panic, knew exactly how to maneuver the car to get it back into a defensive posture, and no impact between the pair of them. And that's Creed now that's coming from our top 10. So that answers one question on when are our top 10 going to pit. That gap up front still continuing to close, but it's not closing particularly quickly. Simmons not eating away at that lead as quickly as I thought he might. Jamie Peters-Ennis maintaining a very good pace indeed. Here is Tom O'Farrell on the back still of Ash Hill. That is a back marker that they are looking at. That is not Nathan Maximin. That they would like it to be 4th position. Oh, that's a bit unfortunate. The back marker should have really bled out the throttle and got on the brakes a bit earlier than that, before the braking zone of Rocket Inn. But it's so difficult to judge distance when all you can see in your mirrors is just white. It's just all light. You can't entirely tell how close they are behind you. No harm, no foul. That would have cost them maybe a few tenths on their overall pace, but no impact. Well navigated by all concerned.
It is. I think for the back marker, the more important thing, especially in conditions like this, was to be predictable. Lifting off and maybe braking a bit early would have caught O'Farrell off guard. Could have, ended in more disaster than would have caused. By staying to a racing line, O'Farrell knew what he needed to do and was able to negotiate it, with a clear communication between both drivers. No harm, no foul, as you said, and they're both able to continue on in good pace. O'Farrell still all over the rear end of Ash Hill. And for those of for those people out there who were with us 2 weeks ago when we headed to Donington, Ash Hill was on fire in terms of his defensive driving. He did not let a single driver past unless they absolutely 100% deserved to get past after laps upon laps of trial by fire. O'Farrell now is going to have a really tough job of getting this 5th place. However, immediately onto the attack as they run their way through this back straightaway towards the climb up towards the braking zone at Rocket. O'Farrell on the left-hand side. Those 2 lights you can see there, that's the championship leader. The ones on the left-hand side of your screen at Ash Hill. However, not too big of a battle being put up on this particular occasion. I think for Ash Hill, the consensus was, it's O'Farrell. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when he's getting past.
Yeah, you realistically know who you're in a battle with, and if you're 7th in the championship and the championship leader is bearing down on you, you know realistically it's going to happen. But in fairness, Ash Hill was perfectly entitled to make that defense as robust as he could. That was an on-track position. It wasn't being lapped or anything like that. So fair play to both drivers there. Tom O'Farrell may feel a bit aggrieved as we now see Nathan Maximin coming into the pit from the top 5. That has cost Tom some time, but that being said, nothing against the rules for it. As we now run aboard Gary Preble, that is now cutting the grass on the inside line with enough tyres on tarmac to make it legal. He's doing everything he can to just get that tiny bit more momentum than Hardy Connolly ahead, and it's not yielding anything for him. You want to talk about a frustrated driver? Gary Preble is handling his frustration very well, I must say.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you don't want to be frustrated, get past him. I mean, he's given it a good go. Connolly has given up, an equally good defence to Preble's attack. So, don't want to be frustrated, just get past him. Simple as that. It really isn't. Connolly has put up an amazing defence. Even when he's made a mistake, he's been able to immediately switch back on and get back up to pace, get back up to a high standard of defensive driving. Preble, once again, maybe eyeing up that left-hand side, doesn't really know where the corner is, just going to scoot his way through, but Connolly just so confident. Yes, Preble had a look, and for a lot of drivers at that point would have maybe been a bit tentative and just given, a little bit of leeway. Not Connolly. He just took a racing line, was like, all right, you can go for that if you want, mate, but I'm taking a racing line, and, well, I'm going to keep this 6th place.
That's experience coming to that. Although that was a bit deep for Connolly. That's cost him that valuable momentum. Can Gary Preble make use of it? No, not enough room. Now Bobby Simmons is in, championship leader. No, he isn't. He's the champion. Beg your pardon. So champion from last season, champion protagonist alongside Tom O'Farrell. He's in. So how quickly can his pit stop take place? Well, it will be longer than he'd like, no matter how short it is. But Bobby Simmons then has done the pit stop requirement, so it comes out in 5th place. Very much on his own. Some drivers like that. Some drivers need someone to chase to make sure they maintain their pace overall. Colin Dunn is also in from the top 10.
So now we are really starting to see our big protagonists make their way through, and we'll of course see the consequence of this as the race progresses. Still 18 minutes left of the pit window, so still plenty of time for others to make their way in. But of course, for the likes of Simmons, who have made their way through, they are going to have to be on a fight back and maximise this point in the race. While maybe they have taken tyres or a little bit extra fuel, maybe they've just changed absolutely nothing. Probably unlikely. They're probably just gone for a change of tyres, because Anglesey, a very demanding circuit all round, especially because it is quite easy to slide around here. A lot of corners that depend a lot on the weight shift of the car, and you do put a lot of stress through your tyres, so that might well be the case. And if he is on fresh tyres, it might be the time to use them in order to claw back a little bit of time relative to those around him. Couple of battles going on. You can see the left, that's in absolutely pitch black, and then on the right we ride on board with Gary Preble, who is in pursuit of Connolly, who we're riding on board with on the left. And probably, well, both of them into the pit lane, in fact, actually, and that is a very tricky sequence to do in the dark. I have to say respect to everyone that's come in at this portion of the race for not completely just, caning it into the wall.
Dan Abbott in as well, so 3 cars all coming in unison. So yeah, that's a bit of a shame there from our amazing camera operators. They were lining up a brilliant camera shot, one looking backwards and one looking forwards, and both of them came into the pits literally 3 corners later. That was a bit unfortunate, but that is the joy. That is the joy of camera operation. You never quite know what the drivers are going to do. And again, for those wondering why at this point we are sticking with the onboard cameras more than anything else, well, the offboard shots you've seen would highlight for why, as we see Colin Dunn fresh out of the pits again, resuming his battle with Scott Thorne, this time for 13th position. getting that tail wagging, trying to get the car to rotate. Yeah, the sliding motion up there isn't the quickest way to do it. It looks great though.
Yeah, it really does, and very, very impressive, especially in front-wheel drive cars, because I don't know, you don't get much of a slide, but it still looks cool while you're doing it, because you can just...
It's good fun if you get it right as well.
Yeah, exactly. So clunky when you get it wrong, but so satisfying to get right. When you look back on it and you see the rear end swinging out while you're just planting the throttle, it feels great. But obviously, the slower the car, the more difficult it is to drift as such, because there's a lot less power to lean on, especially when they're front-wheel drive cars as well. Obviously, drifting is all about oversteer at the rear end and not necessarily understeer at the front, so you have to use a lot more of the rear end balance swing to actually kick the car around. But it does make for some really cool moments when drivers go sideways and they just full plant the throttle, and then just the car just corrects itself pretty much with little to no counter steer. It just does it for you, basically. Front wheel drive saves are always amazing to see. Scott Thorne taking a big chunk of the grass through the final corner, and I'm going to guess he's going to be picking himself up a track limits incursion. It's something that I did quite often, in fairness, around this circuit while I was doing a couple of laps earlier on, particularly at turn 1. The track limits can be very annoying, because you dip just a couple of wheels onto the grass and then the lap's invalidated. I don't know whether or not the track limits have been adjusted for this round as such, because I know they were for Donington a couple of weeks ago. Might be the case again here at Anglesey, but yeah, especially in the dark, it's so easy to go off track.
Especially in the dark. It's really easy just to turn in that little bit too early, and by that point you're committed, so you keep your foot in, you keep your momentum going. You know it's too late to make the adjustment, so Scotland will have to live with that one, as we are now back on board with Ash Hill in 7th. He can see Giles and Creed ahead, so this is a battle for 5th position taking on. I did also see that the lead had briefly changed hands. As that's Giles flirting with the grass on the outside line there. So yeah, Ben Abbott did briefly get the lead from Jamie Peters-Ennis. I'm guessing that Jamie had made a mistake somewhere, as he did have the lead comfortably to himself. But yeah, Ben Abbott has had briefly taken over the lead. We didn't see the incident take place, but I did see the tower did update with that lead change earlier on. Less than 27 minutes of the race remain. Less than 15 minutes for the pit window to be utilised by our drivers. So not everybody has been in just yet. Our race leader being one of them. I think his immediate pursuer also yet to give his pit crew something to do. Again, Peters-Ennis just flirting with the grass. That's not too bad. That's at Rocket Inn, I believe. Yes, it is, because they are now coming through Peel. So turns 7, 8, and 9 respectively. So is he going to come in this time? Hopefully he has remembered he does need to. That may sound like a derogatory statement. Again, no disrespect meant to any of our drivers, top or bottom. These cars are good fun to race. They're comparatively simple than other Formulae, but again, you add darkness into the mixture and it is a very different beast entirely. But in the heat of battle, and again, Jamie Peters-Ennis, he's 3rd in the championship overall, so he was 2nd at Silverstone on the opening round of this season. Was 4th last time out, so hasn't taken a race win, has the pace to do well in this series. However, from the early pace we saw from Ben Simmons particularly, we haven't really seen Tom O'Farrell's overall pace, as he's always been fighting the traffic following his early excursions. So Peters-Ennis is in a position where he obviously leading the race, having led the race for quite a while, and in the heat of battle with Ben Abbott, you'd be surprised how easy it is to forget when the pit window closes. And I have seen numerous drivers pit 1 lap too late, or they misjudge it and they think, I'll come in this lap, it should be just as the pit window closes, and they've missed the pit window by about 10 seconds. Hopefully none of our drivers fall for that one.
It's a very easy mistake to do, and it's those trivial things that add up, not necessarily something you'd give too much thought. It's just, I'll come into the pit lane, I know roughly what I'm doing. But even, those small things like actually timing the pit lane well, getting into the pit lane, making sure you stop and don't speed, pulling into your pit box, all those small things have, they're very hard. It's very hard to gain time from them, but it's so easy to lose time from doing them. And also the time gain that you get from doing them really right does not at all near equate the time lost that you get from doing them really wrong. So it's got to be, you have to be so precise around the pit window time of the race, your in-laps, your pit stops in of itself, and then the out-laps that come just after it. Jamie Peters-Ennis still running really nicely though, in control of this race. 24 minutes still left to go, so still, you know, a third of the race left. As we transition, of course, probably towards the sunset in the next couple of moments, just as the sun begins to rise into the final moments of this race. Ben Abbott, though, yet to pit, so of course does need to do so at some point, and that will bring him out of contention for the lead, probably behind Bobby Simmons, but still, good place for the podium.
Yeah, absolutely. So they are still in a very, very strong position, as Nathan Maxman has been in, but he's some distance out of the road. Someone's gone off the road here. The very distinct telltale dust being thrown up from the excursion of somebody, because no way of identifying who it is at this point. I can tell you it is a Ford KA. That is all I can identify. Is that Tom Bunton's car? Yeah, I can't see enough of it to tell. But yeah, again, that can also be a worry, wouldn't it? Oh, it is the Grid Finder car. So yeah, I had actually correctly identified Tom Bunton. I bet I couldn't do that in the daylight hours, let alone in the dark. Tom Bunton doing the right thing and getting out of the way of the races as they were coming through. As in comes Ben Abbott. So he's had enough of his battle behind Jamie Peters-Ennis, and he's chosen now to get his pit stop done.
And then, of course, we'll be back on his way, probably still with a contention for the podium. You can see already in and then immediately out again. So taking their mandatory stop. They don't necessarily have to stop for tyres or fuel. They just have to tick it off and be on their way once again. So maybe the consensus is not to take tyres and not necessarily to take much fuel either. Maybe that was the case for Simmons during his pit lane, because of course Peters-Ennis and Simmons have both come into the pit lane, but that gap has pretty much tripled really, about 2.5 seconds, now closer to 7.5 between the pair of them. So Simmons may be taking a bit of fuel, or maybe just a slightly slower pit lane transition at some point, whatever it was, to reopen that gap. Maybe, I doubt he was able to take tyres in that time. I really don't think so. So it's probably just going to be a straight finish between the pair of them to the end of this race. 21 minutes, of course, left of it, and 7 seconds between our two race leaders. Either way, a great result for the pair of them in terms of the championship.
Absolutely so, with still plenty of racing post pit stop to complete as the sun doth begin to rise. The big old light bulb in the sky becoming visible once more. And yes, I can confirm the sun does indeed rise from that side of the circuit. Moonlight still available, but the sun, a welcome addition to this race, indicating that the closing stages will be arising, and also makes our life as commentators much easier of identifying who is who, and also for those that are a little bit more reliant on the visual cues, where their breaking points are, where the apexes are, etc., etc. They'll be relieved that the darkness is receding.
The sun will begin to rise. 20 minutes on the clock, and looks very picturesque. Of course, you can see the sea in the background and the sun climbing up over the horizon. One of something that Toby Owen mentioned before the race, something that the drivers were talking about before the race, as to how nice it looks as you rise up over and you can see the view over the horizon. But a sight for sore eyes for some to be breaking their way back into the daylight. Harley Connolly making the move for the top 10. You can see Dan Abbott making a bit of a mistake, but Harley Connolly in desperation goes in a little bit too late. The up and under is there, and the fight for 10th rages on.
That's it's still not concluded yet, as two cars, well, really three, with the addition of Harvey right behind, is ready to pick up the pieces should this all go wrong. They've just gone through church. Now I'm able to identify the corners a bit easier as well. We can start using our off-board cameras again. There's a bit of a tap there between Connolly and Abbott. Abbott still being kind of hung out to dry on that outside line. Can Harvey do anything about it? No. Now the advantage switches briefly back to Harley Connolly, and that's pushed. Well, he didn't push. Dan Abbott pushed himself a little bit too deep coming into Rocket. No harm, no foul, though, as it's such a short run towards the right-hander. Now, three of them all in a line coming into Peel. Oh, no, that's a touch on the tail of Dan Abbott. He's going to lose both of those positions. I suspect he'll feel a bit aggrieved by that, but he still has time to make up the lost ground.
Yeah, it's difficult. Of course, 20 minutes, definitely a sprint to the finish. Not a ton of time, but still enough to make something happen. I mean, we saw how quickly Simmons was able to turn things around. We saw how quickly Abbott was able to climb through the field. If there's time on the clock, then there are positions and time to be gained, so do not give up until that checkered flag flies. So even if you have some problems, then keep pressing on. Perseverance, definitely a key attribute when it comes to endurance racing. And this round firmly the endurance race of the calendar. We flip that on its head though when we go to Snetterton in a week's time. We get two 30-minute sprint races as opposed to the normal 60. So we get our two altered formats to sort of round off this halfway point of the season, round 3 into round 4, which should be a lot of fun. Ash Hill and Greg Giles fighting over 5th place as well. Both of them definitely face some difficulties so far in the race, particularly Greg Giles. Ash Hill running really strongly though in that fight for 5th. You can see very, very close as they run their way uphill, just in the bottom of your screen there momentarily, up towards the braking zone. Hill able to stay ahead of Giles for now, and Nick Creed, Gary Preble will all begin to close that gap the more they fight.
Yeah, absolutely so. Yeah, there you can see on the tower, Hill and Giles still arguing for 5th position as we're very much in the closing stages. Oh, that's someone getting onto the grass just ahead of Connolly. Was that Tom O'Farrell and Gary Preble? I'm not entirely certain who was doing a bit of lawn mowing there. But yeah, still continue. Yeah, bearing in mind we are an hour into this race or close to it. Yeah, still plenty of battles going on. Vast majority of the pit stops are completed, and still we have got several cars all getting very close, all still arguing for position. Absolutely brilliant to see.
This race is far from over in terms of these races out there. They will fight until the very bitter end, like we saw at Donington, like we saw at Silverstone. If there's a race to be had, these guys will race it. Harley Connolly able to cement himself inside the top 10, about 3 seconds off Tom O'Farrell, who is suspended really in this race. Can't really make much gains forward, but still, definitely the opportunity is there to move his way back past Gary Preble. Still 5 minutes left of the pit window. The only driver yet to do so, to my knowledge, is James Harvey and also Andy Greer-Hardy as well. The last of those to actually make their mandatory pit stop, so not too long. So what we're seeing right now is essentially the true order of the field. The majority of the pit stops have made their way down. There you can see Andy Greer-Hardy into the pit lane also. So it is just an out-and-out, all-out brawl to the end. The gaps are what they are. You've got to deal with them, and you've got 16 minutes to do something about it.
Absolutely so. So, you know, looking here, this is David Evans on the back of Greg Copeland. This, yeah, these guys are fighting no less hard than those towards the top end of the field. It may well be for the kind of, you know, lower midfield positions, but even still, positions are positions to fight for. The racing instinct is just as strong in them as it would be between, you know, Peter Zennis and if he was defending for the race lead, or, you know, in that pack, you know, Giles, Creed and Preble, they're only a second apart each. As again, David Evans tries a slightly different line coming up into Rocket than Greg Copeland. Can he get it done? No, has to go, or switching to a wider line. He wants to maximize his exit speed over Greg Copeland. Can he get it done? They are going to be side by side, are they? Is he coming into Peel? Nicely driven by both of them, but that move isn't yet done. As we, yeah, we've got basically two different battles at the same point in the track. Yeah, so here you can see on the left-hand side, that's the battle for 10th position going on, as yeah, in much the same kind of ferocity as a battle for 16th.
Very much so. Also something that we've noticed towards the top end of the field, actually. We'll get back to that in just a second, because Copeland versus Evans is still going on. David Evans with a good run off the final corner, a short run towards turn 1, and the inside line definitely more beneficial, but Copeland using that outside momentum to sling that Ford KA the long way round. Back to the inside for turn number 2 though. Who's going to be the brave one on the brakes? Copeland's the first to reach the apex as Evans saws his way the long way round, trying to maintain that minimum speed. Gets the up and under as they run their way towards the flat out right-hander. If you're on the optimal line, use the curb to rotate the car. It might well be the case that Evans is able to get ahead. However, Copeland not going down without a fight.
I wondered if Copeland had actually realised how much alongside him David Evans was, but thankfully he turned out on that move before impact. So that is very, very, yeah. Hardy Colony has had a moment somewhere. He's now down into 14th position, bearing in mind where he was only a few laps ago. But doesn't now David Evans has got that move done. It's now his chance to have to defend against the onslaught behind him. Here's Colin Dunn, still fairly close with Scott Thorne, as we've seen him before, but he's closing in on Dan Abbott now for 11th position. There is Tom O'Farrell. Oh, he's nailed to the back of Greg Preble. So that's a battle for 8th position with Nick Creed not too far behind. Not the way that our championship leader would have wanted to continue his championship momentum, but either way, Tom making the best of a bad situation. Actually, Greg Giles not far ahead of them either. So a potential 3 or potential or 4-way battle, but only 14 minutes remaining. So time is not on their side anymore. Side by side coming through Rocket in. Oh no! As that's contact with Preble trying to maximize his corner entry speed, not realizing that Tom O'Farrell was still alongside, and that has sent Preble off into the dust.
It has indeed. An unfortunate one at that. I don't really know where to pin the blame. Tom O'Farrell, though, as you say, making the best of a bad situation. As a championship leader, you're not going to be able to win every single race. If you do, then fair play to you, but you are always going to face adversity. You are always going to have difficulties. It's how you bounce back, it's how you pick yourself up, and it's how you get the best out of these bad races. And O'Farrell being inside the top 10 is a great way to just score a decent chunk of points going forward. As long as he can keep up that consistent run that he lacked over the course of 2023, he'll then be able to maybe bounce back and get back after Bobby Simmons. Speaking of Bobby Simmons as well, that gap to Jamie Peters-Ennis has begun to close, now only 3.6 seconds, and on average a good 3-4 tenths a lap being taken out of Peters-Ennis. The only question remains, though, is there enough time for Simmons to not only close that gap but also then get ahead?
Just about, but it will leave very, very little room for error on the table if that is the case. But yeah, we'll see as that battle continues. We'll look at Colin Dunn here, still in the tyre tracks of Dan Abbott. Right behind him is Scott Thorne. Right behind him is Harley Connolly. There you go. So after over an hour's racing, they are still separated by mere car lengths between him, in a very, very hotly contested battle for the top 10. As that's Colin Dunn sizing up a move. Oh, that's way too late on the brakes for Scott Thorne. How on earth there wasn't impact between Colin Dunn and Scott Thorne, I don't know. I thought for sure that Colin Dunn was going to have some company in that car.
Yeah, I thought so too. Very, very close between the pair of them. Pit window is now closed. 12 minutes left as we're an hour into this race. Done 60 and the final 12 are upon us. The final few laps, of course, in round number 3 of the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series. Very close in the fight for the final step on the podium as well between Ben Abbott and Nathan Maximan. Plenty of battles to sink our teeth into over the course of these final moments. And well, hopefully we can be thoroughly entertained by each and every single one of them. Very, very close, that gap approaching less than a tenth of a second. I think Ben Abbott might well be under pressure versus Nathan Maximan, just keeping an eye on the timing tower, because Maximan, after being spun round I think a little bit earlier on, is looking to fight back and climb his way onto the podium. There is the battle. Maximan forced to go to the long way round. Ben Abbott, though, defensive, does not want to give this podium up at all. Side by side down through the sweeping nature of this next right-hander. Maximan discouraged from the move, and Ben Abbott hangs on.
Just about. That's a very, very robust and well-defended position, but this is for the podium. Yeah, this carries, you could argue, more weight than any other battle, even though it's as hot and contested as Creed and Giles fighting just as heavily for 6th position. Nick Creed just getting ahead. Oh, that's a bold late braking maneuver there for Ben Abbott. I didn't think he would slow that down enough, but he did manage to maintain that position. Then the Maximan is going to have to do it all over again. He's got time, but again, the lap count is continuing to drop down. The pit window is now closed, so I do think that everybody has served their mandatory stops. But so now it is all about the on-track action. Nathan Maximan almost getting into the boot of Ben Abbott's car, thinking about a long way on the outside maneuver, coming through the banking. That's not going to pay off a huge amount, but here we go yet again. Ben Abbott, he knows he's going to have to defend hard. It does look like the pace advantage at the moment is with Nathan Maximan, and Ben Abbott will know that.
That is the thing, of course. Ben Abbott fighting an uphill battle quite literally as they run their way towards the next braking zone at Rocket, but Maximan, the one with the pace. Abbott, the one with the track position, however, holds firm as they get very close to contact, rising up through the kink. Bit of contact as they run their way towards the braking zone, but able to hang on to it. Abbott, though, not scared to be late on the brakes. Maximan gets the up and under, bit of contact along the way. It's deja vu from last lap. Ben Abbott hangs on to that inside line and parks it on the apex perfectly as Maximan searches for the grass in order to get the up and under. Abbott defends the inside once more as they both completely gain their momentum. And they're suspended really in this fight for third. They've got no chance of going forwards, no threat from behind, so it's an all-and-out brawl for third place, as once again Tom O'Farrell picking his way through into 6th place, and nicely done versus Nick Creed and Greg Giles.
Yeah, this has been a really ferocious battle that Tom O'Farrell, Nick Creed, and Greg Giles have been involved with. There's that's a back marker that's doing an excessive amount of lawn mowing, but is staying very much out of the way. He doesn't want to be involved in this battle, and I don't blame him at all. As the battle for third continues, very, very, very close between Maximin and Abbott once more into turn one. Can Nathan Maximin find that extra pace? He needs to get past Ben's exceedingly robust. All fair. There's nothing. Hasn't been anything too. I think hasn't been anything too untoward from Ben Abbott. Nathan Maximin possibly getting a little frustrated, maybe trying to shake Ben Abbott with those little nudges. But Ben is doing exactly what he needs to do. He's trying to break the momentum of Nathan Maximin, and by parking exactly on the apex. It's exactly the right thing to do in these cars. It will frustrate Nathan Maximin, no doubt, but at the moment, whilst he may have a slight pace advantage, is not quite enough to claim that third place from Ben Abbott.
Not quite, but still a few moments to do so. Also, Bobby Simmons, Jamie Peters-Ennis in the fight for the race lead. 8 minutes left to go, and 1.5 seconds separate the pair of them. Peters-Ennis, of course, is going to be starting to feel that pressure as Bobby Simmons ever closing in on the race leader, who has done such a good job of maximising his opportunities and being consistent. However, Bobby Simmons has had the out-and-out pace 5/10 taken out on that lap alone.
Yeah, they haven't lost any of their determination whatsoever to gain any position, especially for Bobby Simmons chasing for that overall lead. Now, is Peters-Ennis, has he been backing off? Has he been trying to preserve his tyres for the late defence? Don't know, is the honest answer to that. Bobby is no doubt pushing as hard as he can. The fastest race lap does belong to Bobby Simmons, as once again, deja vu. It's exactly the same line that Nathan Maximin has tried time and again on Ben Abbott. It's essentially the right line. He's trying to maximize his momentum, but Ben has had an answer every single time, which will get under Nathan's skin a little bit. It will be frustrating no matter how hard you try. The car ahead of you just has the answer to whatever offense you put in there. But time is really quickly running out. These laps may only be 1.5 minutes long. There's only 7 minutes left, and Nathan again doesn't bounce out the inside of Rocket in. Oh, is he going to go for a move here? Coming through, Rocket out. Oh, again, so close. No impact between them again. Ben just seems to be that little bit better on the brakes. That is what has been keeping Nathan Maximin mainly at bay.
It is, yeah. Abbott just so strong at putting the car where it needs to be and being quick where he needs to be as well. That is all that he needs to do. So great at reading the body language of Maximan as well, able to position the car and get the foot down where it needs to. Maximan, though, sliding through the corkscrew, trying to maximise his speed and put the car in places that Abbott not quite expecting it to be, and being unpredictable. That's really not what Maximan needs to do to shake up this battle. Fight for the lead also, less than a second.
Very much so. So we've got two fantastic battles for several podium spots. Well, the entire podium was being fought for in two different battles, basically. And yet again, Ben Abbott defends that inside line, parks it on the apex, prevents Nathan Maximin from doing the up and under again. So the 31 car says he has to try and find a different route. That's easy for me to say, but when the only route that's realistically available to you to maximize your output speed is being blocked at every turn, what do? You have to try something unconventional, which isn't always going to work. I laud Ben Abbott's efforts. He's doing a brilliant job of fighting against a car that seems, at least on the surface, to be that little bit quicker, but he's doing everything right to keep Nathan Maximin at bay, and I applaud Maximin's raw determination here. It's like we said before, there's still going to be a very, very strong finish. Nathan Maximin 4th in the championship at the moment. Ben is right behind him in 5th place. So these two are championship rivals as well as race rivals, as we now look at another pair of championship contenders. Bobby Simmons 2nd in the championship. Jamie Peters-Ennis is in 3rd, all fighting for that top spot on the podium.
Indeed, so final 4 minutes 40 seconds. Of course, this is that fight for the lead directly for championship position. Of course, they're separated by 2 points in the championship, 50 points for first, 48 for second, and then of course on countback, whoever wins this race will take second place, potentially also first place in that championship hunt as well. Nathan Maximan fighting, of course, with Ben Abbott still into turn number 2, no way through for now, just waiting for that mistake more than anything, trying to keep the pressure on, and that might well be the space. Ben Abbott trying to push to the outside of the circuit, Maximan not quite alongside in order to see his way through. Bobby Simmons, half a second between himself and Jamie Petersen. Surely it's only a matter of time before he gives it a go.
Well, he's been giving it a go for the last 15 minutes at least. But yeah, you're absolutely right. He's just trying to force that mistake. Can he get the momentum around the outside line? Nearly forced onto the grass. Ben Abbott's exceedingly robust defense, almost pushing Nathan Maximan onto the grass. Oh no, and there's impact between the two. That's unsettled Maximan's car. That is going to force him onto the grass. And in a very uncomfortable position, there's impact again between himself and Ben Abbott. Oh, that got very, very scrappy. They're now side by side on the way up towards Peel. Now Maximan has the inside line. He is going to give him the momentum. That may well be examined. Oh, but he's gone too deep. He's gone too deep at Peel. That's handed the position straight back to Ben Abbott. After all that, it's business as usual between these two. Oh, or is it? No, I stand corrected. Still side by side. Into the podium. Well, one of them will be. Oh, into the corkscrew, beg your pardon. They are still side by side as they come through the final turn. And that is Ben Abbott going to run Nathan Maximan out of room. Yes, he is. But who's going to win out on top? It's Maximan after all that. That's what started just after church, finishes around the lap at turn 1. Maximan finally wrestles that third place from Ben Abbott.
Back up the inside though from Abbott. He sends the move to turn 2. What a move that is. What a launch. Maximan sees it coming though and goes to the outside. Manages to keep that sweeping nature and off the road here for the fight for the lead. Jamie Petersen, we saw it in the picture-in-picture. Huge lockup going into Rocket. Bobby Simmons then inherits the lead. What has happened between those two while we were focusing on that fight for third? And goodness me, Petersen is taking a huge cut track into the final 2.5 minutes of this race. Huge dramas, and I think Bobby Simmons waiting up for him in a show of sportsmanship. We still get our fight for the win.
Absolutely so. I mean, there could have been a somewhat unfortunate impact between the two that Bobby felt was more his fault. So he has very sportingly allowed Petersen to get the car settled again, because he could not have slowed that down. He was all on the grass. Oh no! And there's impact between the two again as Bobby Simmons gives Jamie Petersen a big old punch in the face. And now is he going to maintain that position? He has finally got the lead. There's 2 laps remaining then, just shy of 2 minutes left of this race, and I don't know who's going to come out on top after all this.
I don't think anyone does. I think that's what the most exciting thing is about this race, is that even after 70 minutes of racing so far, we still have unpredictability. Petersen launches the move to turn 2, spots the gap, but Simmons taking a perfect line, arching wide in to cut back for late apex to maximize his run at this very portion of the circuit where you need to maximize your straight line speed and keep, of course, the revs high, keep that acceleration high as you accelerate out of turn number 3 onto this back run towards Rocket. I don't quite think Petersen has got enough to launch a counter-attack. Bobby Simmons, he keeps it clean. It's his race to lose.
Well, very much so. I mean, the fact that Bobby Simmons has absolutely destroyed the lead that Jamie Petersen had legitimately built up whilst Bobby Simmons was fighting away through traffic would show that Simmons definitely had the pace advantage, and that has now paid off. Tom O'Farrell is now in the battle for a position in the top 5 from the Lebanon line car of Ash Hill. Oh, he's pushing the yellow and green car through church. He wants that inside line. Ash Hill, he's not making it easy. Whilst they may not be immediately next to each other in the championship, Ash Hill is 7th in the championship at the moment. He's not going to make it easy for Tom. There's a bit of nudging going on. That's Ash Hill with the inside line coming into Rocket in, and he maintains the position. Very nicely driven from both of them. Bit of door bagging along the way, but Ash Hill hangs on to that top 5 for now.
He does, just onto the final lap of this race then, and Bobby Simmons leads Petersen. Tom O'Farrell searching for that top 5. We begin our final venture here around Anglesey. Surely it's got to be Simmons that comes out on top. I mean, unless he makes a drastic mistake, he has very much deserved this victory.
Absolutely so, but whatever incident led to Jamie Petersen's somewhat unusual grass excursion may well be looked at post-event, but that's up to the stewards to decide if that is going to be the case. But Bobby Simmons certainly with the advantage at the moment, but Tom O'Farrell still locked in his battle with Ash Hill. for 5th place. It's anyone's guess as to who's going to win their respective battles. But like you say, Zach, it does look like, certainly on the face of it, that Bobby Simmons has done enough to keep Jamie Peters-Ennis, or prevent Jamie Peters-Ennis' first win of the season.
I think so. Couple corners left to go in this race then. Bobby Simmons, of course, from pole position, has gone up, down, left, right in this race. 72 minutes of action, round number 3 of the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series, and Bobby Simmons is on the horizon of returning to winning ways. Of course, took that victory for the 2023 Winter Sim Series season. He runs through the corkscrew for the final time, and of course has to lap traffic once again. Peters-Ennis in hot pursuit, both of them being perfect side by side, but will have to call the leader across the line. The checkered flag will wave here in Anglesey to end off round number 3, and it's going to be Bobby Simmons that ends the reign of Tom O'Farrell and takes another step towards potentially wrapping up consecutive championships. Victorious here in Anglesey, but here is the current championship leader of O'Farrell fighting tooth and nail with Ash Hill all the way to the line.
Absolutely so. The lemon and lime car is just not giving him anything, and why should he? That is a genuine position. He's not being lapped, but it does look like Tom O'Farrell has won out on that one. Nathan Maximin did manage to retain the last step of the podium from Ben Abbott. Here comes Tom O'Farrell. Well, his championship lead is certainly going to be, certainly potentially overhauled by Bobby Simmons at the moment, but he's still got plenty of fight left in him for the rest of the championship. Oh, as Hardy Connolly nearly gets into the back of Preble on the way down through the corkscrew. But this is 9, 10, 11 and 12 in short succession. Such is the nature of these cars. Such has been the nature of this race. Battles throughout. That is what we love to see.
What an end to what a great race that saw us, of course, take to an entire 24-hour day-night cycle around the difficult undulation of Anglesey, a circuit that, well, not many people are overly familiar with, and a big adjustment in these EnduroKA cars that are so fun to drive, so raceable, and it bred great racing. Round number 3, of course, of this amazing championship, and all I want is more. Thankfully, we only have a week to wait before we're back underway for 2 races in Snetterton. But all in all, I really can't fault that race. It was next to perfect. Of course, we'll run you through the final grid order, the final finishing order as soon as we can. But Chris, what a race for you to jump in on.
Oh, that was... I wasn't expecting a last-minute call up there, but it has been a fantastic experience. I'm very much glad to be part of it.
Thank you very much, Chris. Of course, yeah, jumping in on very short notice, and very much appreciate the help, because 72 minutes of that solo, I think I would have absolutely destroyed my voice, similar to what I did at Silverstone, but for an extra 12 minutes of racing. So it was nice to have Chris alongside. It's been a while since I've worked with him as well. I think well over a year. Very, very good commentator, very good person to work with as well. And what a way that we were able to call that race. It was sublime, and we get to continue it. Of course, we still have 3 more rounds of action to come, rounds 4, 5 and 6 of the EnduroKA Winter Sim Series. Still got, of course, the interviews to come. We'll have some final thoughts with our drivers after the race to see what sort of they made of all of the carnage, all of the chaos and everything in between here for this race. And, well, the championship is going to look ever spicy. I absolutely almost guarantee it as such. It was insane. Of course, you get 40 points for 6th place. For 5th is 44. A win for Bobby Simmons is 6, which closes the gap to 0 in the championship fight between Bobby Simmons. Of course, if that result stands, it's at the moment provisional, we're being told. Of course, we'll just call it as it stands at the moment. But Simmons wins. So O'Farrell with then 44 points, which is a 6-point deficit. That closes it to, of course, 144 each. But O'Farrell will, I believe, be leading the championship by 1 race win over Bobby Simmons as such. But matched in terms of points, our 2 championship protagonists from last season, our reigning champion up there as well. What a season that we're getting in store for us. Of course, we have got a couple of drivers in the interview waiting room. We'll drag them in as soon as we're ready. You can already see Nathan Maximin, Bobby Simmons. I'm going to be interested to talk to Bobby Simmons, actually, about his thoughts and feelings of this race, because this win has been a long time coming. Bobby Simmons, welcome in, mate. And I know we say each week that you're going to be back for the next, and well, you're here and you're a race winner, mate.
Yeah, well, I thought I'd make it 3, 2, 1 in podiums this year, so
right, it was
I've gone for
intentional,
the repetition. Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Sweet, awesome. Well, I mean, you've smashed it, mate. Absolutely sublime race. I mean, it wasn't perfect. You had your issues, but talk us through the race, because you had your ups and your downs, and yet you're still able to come out on top.
Well, I think your objective of smashed it was definitely the right one, because I've never known. Yeah, I've never known driving standards like that before. Like, I know me and Jamie had that incident at the end. I think we're going to have to talk separately around. I waited for him, waited until we were up to racing speed, and then overtook him afterwards, at which point he then turned into me at the chicane, which he'd already brake checked me there, so not happy about that at all. Everyone just seemed to be, it was just like a race of avoidance, and it's really bad talking like this because I really enjoy this series, but I just can't believe that today.
I mean, it's tough, of course, difficult circumstances for sure, and I think adrenaline definitely, you can understand some drivers' frustration with such, but you have to admit and sort of empathise with the fact that it was tough out there. And I think, do you think maybe it's attributed to the fact it's a slightly longer race, attrition, tyre wear, anything like that, that, you know, could throw extra spanners into the mix that could, you know, throw things off?
I mean, 100%. Again, with Jamie, like, I was catching him for the whole of my second stint, and I actually changed tyres because I had done 2 race sims beforehand, which showed that if you change tyres, you would finish the race 10 seconds quicker. So it was definitely a strategy game, as well as the extra 12 minutes. I noticed as soon as the 60 minutes was finished, I was making little mistakes, and I realised that I need to practice for longer now to have that concentration level. So it was definitely harder, this race.
Sure, and I think that adds to the challenge, right? I mean, round 3, we continue into the second half of the season. Of course, we go to Snetterton in a week's time. We've had a different format today. We have the complete opposite of a different format in a week's time. 2 races. How are you feeling?
Excited because we don't have to do a pit. Well, I don't think we have to do a pit stop. I should probably look that up. A sprint race should be really nice because the tyres start to get on edge around 30 minutes, and it's a longer track, more tyres, more tyre wear, more turns. So it should be good, yeah.
Awesome stuff, Bobby. Well, thank you for joining us in the commentary booth. Once again, a huge congratulations on your win, and needless to say, we'll see you back in a week's time.
Well, yeah. Well, there's 2 races, so I'll see you at least one of them.
Awesome stuff, Bobby. Well, take care. We'll see you back in a week, mate.
See you then. Bye.
Take care. Bobby Simmons, our race winner, and of course matched Tom O'Farrell provisionally in terms of the championship lead. What a race that we saw here today. Round number 3 here at Anglesey did not disappoint. I hope everyone at home, of course, enjoyed it. Thank you to our sponsors, of course, from Positive Perception for doing the vast majority of the liveries. Also, Burton for supporting and funding this series with 3 fully funded ARDS license tests to the top 3 in the championship. Similar to what we had last season, we get to do it all over again for this season. Able to give some of these drivers that bridge potentially into real world UK motorsport. Of course, thank you to everyone, GridFinder as well, and everyone at EnduroKA, everyone behind the scenes for making this possible. Thank you to Mike Yao behind the scenes on the production. Of course, big thank you to Chris Buxton for jumping in on such short notice in order to have cover for Jack after his unfortunate technical difficulties. All in all, a huge success was this race, and I cannot wait to see you all for the second round of the season. We're back in a week when we head to Snetterton. In the meantime, take care and a very warm goodbye.
GridFinder is the home of sim racing leagues. Our management tools allow you to recruit drivers and monitor their ratings and live splits. Find this and more at gridfinder.com. Sign up for free today.